Nebraska, and today we're doing something slightly different. I wanted to do like a knitting update, a knitting podcast update, but I have basically nothing on the needles right now, so we're going to do a little bit of like a cast on party. I think I'm going to be casting on 3 different items this weekend, and I thought I would take you along with me and just do a little bit of like a chat and catch up as I go. So I have a nice cup of tea by me. It is Saturday morning and I have already done all of my like house chores. The house is clean, I am cleaned and got ready, and I have basically the rest of today clear and most of tomorrow as well. So the first thing that I'm planning on casting on is a pair of socks. So I'm going to be knitting the Totally Rad socks by Summerly Knits, and I'm really excited about it because I have not knit a pair of socks in absolutely ages, and I've kind of been like, I have too many pairs of socks, I just don't need another pair of socks. But I woke up this morning and I genuinely was just like, I gotta knit a pair of socks this weekend. Like, I have it in me, my brain and body are just yearning for a new pair of socks. So the first thing that I'm planning on is the Summerly Knits Totally Rad socks. The next thing has been like on my planned list of things to knit for absolutely ages, and it is a Semper Sweater V-neck by the Knit Purl Girl. And I have my swatch for this done. I haven't measured my swatch, but I measured it as I was knitting and it looked like it was going to be fine. And it doesn't look like it changed that much with washing. So I have my gauge swatch. I'm prepared for my Semper Sweater V-neck. And this color green, I'm so excited about it, but is not springy at all. And we are really like finally getting into spring. It's, I think 20 degrees out right now, which is pretty cold, but the plants are starting to like look alive. We have some like lilies in the front of our house that have already started popping up. Even my indoor plants are like thriving all of a sudden. They're obviously like starting to get into growing season, which is really cute. Also, I'm like to the point of adulthood where all of our shot glasses are used for propagating plants. And while this like dark evergreen kind of color is very not springy, I know I'm going to get a ton of wear out of this sweater in like fall and winter of next year, and I have the yarn, I'm prepared to knit it, so I am going to cast this on. And then the last thing I'm considering casting on this weekend is another Lento sweater. So I think I'm going to do a little bit of casting on first thing. I've just been really feeling the sock vibe right now. So right off the bat, I am going to have to make a couple of modifications because I am starting with a little less yarn that I think that I'm going to need. So this is going to be my main color. So this is the Akara yarn merino sock yarn in the color rose gold. And the reason why I'm pretty sure I won't have enough to knit the socks as written is because I used this to knit like a short pair of socks, like a pair of shorty socks. Ooh, at the beginning, I think it was my first cast on in 2022 actually, but I know that I've used a fair amount of this, and the Totally Rad socks are pretty long, and I do want them to be pretty long. They're kind of sporty. They kind of like look like 80s kind of like baseball socks, I guess. So I have this Akara yarn in rose gold. This is the Neighborhood Fiber Company Organic Studio sock yarn in the color Mondoem. And then I also have just a tiny little bit of white. This is just the Lion brand sock yarn, and I'm sure the color is called white. And between the 3 of these, I definitely have enough yarn for a full set of like really long socks, but I'm gonna have to change the color placement a little bit. So these socks start with like a folded cuff instead of doing a ribbed cuff. And then there's a section of just plain stockinette that has stripes in it. And then it goes into just kind of a plainer ribbed sock. So I'm thinking what I'm gonna do is cast on with the white. And I do think I'm going to do ribbing instead of the folded cuff. I just think so that the socks stay up better. But I think I'm gonna start with white for the ribbing, then go into the pink being the main color still, doing stripes with the darker pink. And then when I get to The heels and toes, I'm not sure which one's gonna be which, but the heels and toes are going to have to be colors as well. So I will let you know what I'm feeling as we get towards the heels and toes of these socks. So I think I'm going to end up filming this video over the next couple of days. And because of that, I mean, you're gonna see like lighting differences. I'm going to be in different outfits and stuff like that. But I think I wanna get started with the Summer Lenets Totally Rad socks. I'm very excited about it. So I was just watching the Pom Pom Quarterly, like the magazine. They did a kind of a trunk show, I guess, for their latest magazine. It was really cool. So it was over Zoom, and there was just, you know, a bunch of people there watching. They showed off all of the patterns, and they had all of the designers, I think all of the designers from this quarterly magazine, from this issue, just to like chat about their designs, and they did some games and questions and stuff. It was really cool. It was kind of funny though, because everybody, like you can see on Zoom what other people are doing. And I had my video off for most of it because I was like cooking lunch and making the bed and not like sitting nicely and knitting, but I did get some knitting done. I cast on my Totally Rad socks. I got a tiny bit of the leg done. I got the ribbing done. All good stuff, but I do have to wrap up a couple more chores before I like sit down and actually start knitting. Okay, it is literally 3 o'clock. I have not really sat down to do very much knitting today, but I have finally finished all of my household chores. I really need to do better about like doing the laundry and stuff on weekdays so that I don't have to do it all on one day in the weekend, but I am finally done with my chorin, so it is time to sit down on the couch and do some knitting. I'm really excited because I think the new season of Shadow and Bone should be up on Netflix, and that seems like perfect knitting material, so let's get started. So I have my socks in my favorite sock knitting bag, which I sewed myself in a fabric that features heavily in my living room right now because I got this fabric from a friend of mine. It used to be her curtains that she had gotten from H&M. It's an H&M like fabric. So they were her curtains, and then they were my curtains, and then I've made different curtains. This sock bag, I have a pillow over there that I can see, and I think I had made the pillow from a skirt that I had made previously, all with the same fabric. Isn't that right, Jackie? So here we have curtains. I have my sock bag on the floor here, and then I also have a pillow, all with the same fabric. So I have been working away on my little sock here. I got to 2 of the 3 stripes done, but it's getting kind of late, not late. It's like 6 o'clock, but the sun is starting to set, and I know that if I don't cast on with this like dark green yarn before the sun sets, I'm not going to be able to see it. Like casting on in dark colors is just, it's a different game. So I think I'm going to set my Totally Rad socks down and pick up my Semper sweater V-neck and see if I can get this cast on at least. I had to bring this over to the sun because I could not see for the life of me over there, and I still this yarn, this is the Barocco Remix Light. It's quite like a nubbly texture, and I'm really having a hard time like differentiating the stitches while keeping the ruler in place. So pro tip, I actually just flipped it over because it's a lot easier to see the bumps that make the stitches from the back. So I checked my gauge swatch, and my stitch gauge is pretty much on. It's off by 1/2 stitch, but that can be squished into place. But my row gauge is off by like 5 stitches, in that mine is too short. So I'm probably still just not going to change my needles and do it as is because it's a top-down sweater. So if I need to add or subtract length, I can kind of just do that as I see fit. So I'm gonna go ahead. We might have to make a little adjustment to the yoke depending because of that row gauge difference, but we shall see. And this guy is thrilled to be on my lap. So this pattern calls for fingering weight yarn held with mohair or a DK weight yarn that gets gauge. And I have spoken about before how I really like this yarn. It's the Barocco Remix Light, but they call it a DK weight yarn and it just doesn't feel like it. Like, it feels much thinner than a lot of my DK weight yarn. I was really surprised at how close I got to gauge on this because it's knit with a size 7 needle, and this yarn, which feels basically like fingering weight yarn to me, it's kind of wild how well it worked at a looser gauge than I expected. So knitting on size 7 needles with what feels like fingering weight yarn, to me, I would expect the fabric to be like kind of see-through and like not be super into it, but it actually turned into a really nice fabric. So I just got to get casting on here. I am knitting the size D or size 4 in this pattern, which is not a ton of positive ease for me, but that's what I'm looking for right now. I think that that's going to be a nice look, but we shall see as we get into it. Oh, hi, Bubba. Oh, hey. Hello. You want to sit down? What you thinking? All right. I gotta keep casting on here. I know. Okay, good morning. It is Sunday. It's actually Sunday, technically afternoon now. I spent quite literally the entire morning on the phone, which is not a bad thing, but every time my husband goes on a work trip and he's not here for the weekend, I try to schedule phone calls with people so that I like talk to other human beings throughout the day. So I've been on the phone all morning, but I thought I would give you a little check-in of what I accomplished yesterday. So I cast on my Totally Rad socks and I got through all of the stripes for like the top section. I have a couple more rounds to do before starting the ribbing that goes across the rest of the leg. So that's exciting. And I also got my Semper sweater V-neck cast on and I got through the short row section. And kind of like I expected, the yarn being pretty dark is hard to see at night. So I basically cast this on, got all of the short rows done, and then I was like, no, I can't really see that anymore. I need to work with slightly lighter colors so that I'm not like stressing my eyes out, like trying to squint and see these stitches. It's mostly trying to do like the increases I find difficult to see, especially at night. So I definitely want to keep this as a like daytime project because of the color of the yarn. But I thought I would take you upstairs with me and pick out a couple of yarn options to do a swatch for another Lento. So let's go. So welcome if you haven't seen it before. I am in my attic with my yarn collection. I am probably going to end up moving this downstairs into my work office, like where I work during the day, but for the time being, this is where we are. I have all of my yarn. So I kind of wanted to go through my thought process of picking out a yarn. So I moved you in a little bit closer so you can see. This is my yarn setup. This whole bin is just odds and ends of like barely anything left sock yarn, or like, you know, like the 10-gram little skeins you'll get sometimes. So lots of odds and ends in here that are like too small to do anything besides, I guess, color work or, you know, a heel and toe on socks. Up here I have a couple of sweater quantities and my never-ending Purl Soho half and half wrap, and then the rest of these are just kind of mixed yarn. So these are all of my like usually mostly single skeins of fingering weight yarn, and here I have mostly like 2 skeins of fingering weight. I've got all of my like mohair and fuzzy stuff in here, and then down in these bottom boxes it's just kind of a real mix. Okay, so I have just been going through my collection and I have picked out a couple of different potential options. So I thought I would talk you through what I have going on here. So I have pulled out my mohair box. These are basically all of my fuzzy options because this pattern calls for a single strand of fingering weight yarn held together with a strand of mohair, or like in this case, this is alpaca. But these are my options for colors to hold double. And just like looking at the screen, it's not really pulling in the colors very nicely, so I will have to show you downstairs. But these are my fingering weight options. So over here, we have 2 skeins of Barocco Remix Light. Technically, this is labeled as a DK weight. I could just knit it with this and not have any fuzz at all. Or if I wanted to add fuzz, this is a mohair that I dyed myself. I had intended on dyeing it blue and did not know or didn't realize that mohair and silk dye super differently than wool yarn. So it came out purple even though it was intended to be blue. But this is an option. However, it does not feel very springy, and I'm looking for like a super springy, like lightweight sweater. So that brings us into the rest of these. This is another like option. These are both Arcane Fiberworks in their Hocus Pocus colorway. My mom sent these to me around Halloween, and I think what I'm probably going to do is hold on to these until we get closer to Halloween, and I might do a Cozy Classic Light with these, and there's a little bit of differentiation between the 2 skeins, so I think what I'd probably need to do is helical knitting to basically like twist back and forth between the 2 skeins so that A, there's no pooling because I really don't like pooling, and also to have like this skein which is a little bit brighter and this skein which is a little bit more muted, having them match up together and have the whole sweater be more cohesive. So those are those, which leaves us with these options. So obviously we've got a yellow option and a pink option. And I know obviously these are 2 different yarns. This one is speckled and this one is not, but the speckling on this is pretty spread out. So I'm really curious to see how this would work with helical knitting because the base of the pink is the exact same. So this is from a local dyer here. It's Lazy Bee yarn, and I think it's called Princess Pink or it's Fairy Tale Pink. And then this is Neighborhood Fiber Company, and I believe it is Victorian Village. So I want to try doing like every other row and just swatch it and see how that looks. And I have a couple of different mohairs. I could try it with the white, or I could do like a hot pink and see if that kind of blends together these speckles and the not speckles. And then the last options are yellows, which is way outside of my general comfort zone of clothing to wear. However, I do have a t-shirt that I knit, and this is Purl Soho's linen quill. And the yarn is turmeric. And then these are obviously, is it La Hala or La Jola? Either way, this I have had for years, and the color is Champagne Toast. I feel like this kind of lighter yellow is not as flattering on my skin tone as a more saturated yellow, but I suppose there's no way to know until we try, and I have this yarn, so it's either get it into a new home of somebody who will love it or try it out myself. However, I do not know what kind of mohair to pair with these. I have probably enough of this. It's Knit Picks Aloft, like Knit Picks mohair that has a little bit of yellow in the mix of different colors here, but obviously it's predominantly pink. Honestly, it would go better with these. Or I suppose I could try holding it with white and see if that just lightens it up. These guys are kind of hard with what colors I have on hand here to know what would look good. Honestly, I think this color, which is again from my local yarn dyer here, Lazy Bee, this is a Surrey alpaca and a really beautiful warm gray tone. If I could find like enough fingering weight yarn to go with this, I think that would be my ideal situation. I guess I could dig through. This is like super odds and ends of fingering weight yarn. Like a lot of this is Knit Picks palette yarn. If I can find enough to make a sweater's quantity of colors that would work together, we shall see, because that would be really beautiful. But here's our options. All right, so I have narrowed it down to just a couple of options. Let me talk you through what I'm thinking. So this option would be the easiest. I really think the only mohair that will work with this yellow is that I have here is the white. So that is one option. These are my second option. So I think I have decided, instead of trying to do like helical knitting to knit the two of these together throughout the whole thing, that I would just do a fade so that it goes from the lighter pink to the speckly pink, and it's a little bit less effort to do instead of fading the entire thing together. But I have lots of mohair options that could work with these. So I have this darker pink. I have a couple of these, so I don't think that I would run out. That kind of blends the darker speckle with the lighter pink. Or I have this gray, which honestly I might not even swatch, because I feel like this with a gray yarn would just be so beautiful. So I think I am going to put that back actually. And then the other option would obviously be the white. So now I need to get to a swatching. Quick update. I have made a gut decision that the yellow yarn, it needs to be paired with like a deep golden mustard yellow mohair if I'm pairing it with anything at all. I just don't think that I can do like a buttery yellow like that. I think it needs to have a little bit more of a richer tone. So either I need to find like a dark mustard yellow, almost like, or like a burnt umber kind of color of mohair to pair with that lighter yellow yarn, or I need to find someone who really wants that yellow yarn, because the more I look at it, the more I'm like, I can't wear yellow, like not that shade of yellow, but I feel like a mustard yellow I can do. So thoughts on that, but I will be swatching for a pink Lento sweater. So I cast on this swatch and immediately had second thoughts of like, is this even worth doing? Like having the tiny bit of difference between this speckly pink and this not speckled pink, it just felt like they're so similar that it might kind of look like a mistake instead of being like purposeful. So I took another look through my stash and I found this like super cool toned pink, which is really close to the speckle colors in this pink yarn. So I think what I'm gonna do, because obviously there's only a teeny amount of this, I think I'm gonna cast on with this and do a fade between this to the speckle and then speckle to the not speckle so that it actually looks like it is on purpose. So I got a little bit of the darkest pink in there. I think that it's going to look really good. I am probably going to need to salvage the darker pink out of this swatch for knitting the sweater because there is so little of it left. But I think that that is going to take this from being kind of like a, why bother doing a fade between these two nearly identical yarns, to having much more of a purpose. So that is exciting, but I thought while I'm sitting here swatching that I might as well have a little bit of a chit chat about what is going on with me yarn-wise, because if you've seen my most recent video, you will have heard me talk about the fact that I've developed a lanolin allergy, and I still haven't had my allergy test yet, but just based on me like basically doing my own testing, of working with superwash wools. All of these are superwash versus non-superwash, like really woolly, lanolin rich wools. It seems pretty clear to me that I have a lanolin allergy. It's obviously unfortunate, but not the end of the world, because superwash wools and wools that seem to me like have been thoroughly cleaned in the dyeing process seem to be okay. So what I've done, which kind of sucks, is that I am getting rid of my super woolly wools that are unspun. So I had basically 2 sweater quantities of Nutidin yarn and then some odds and ends of Plotulopi yarn that are unspun yarns. They are beautiful but super sheepy, and for the Nutidin especially, it is really rich in lanolin. Like, it has a lot of lanolin in that yarn. So I have been able to sell most of it. I have basically the other half of the yarn that I had purchased to make my gray sweater. That is the one, what's the name of that brand now? That one like cowl neck sweater that I had self-drafted. That sweater is knit in Nutidin yarn, held double with Einband, and I had bought 5 plates of the gray Nutidin yarn, and I really only used like 2.5 of it. So I have 2.5 of it left, which I still haven't sold yet. I have the listing for it just on a Facebook group. So we shall see if that sells, but I have been able to sell the rest of my collection, which is really good. I need to get that to the post office this week. But I do still have a couple other like woolly wools that are plied. So the Nutidin yarn and the Plotulopi are unspun yarns. They're not plied at all. And they are like, the way you receive them is in a cake, where they are like, the fibers are kind of wrapped around like a ball of yarn basically, but because it's unspun, it's really difficult. It's not like you could put that into a hank. Like, you can't turn that into like a big loop of yarn, which is kind of what you would need to do to wash it. All of that is to say that I have basically, technically, I guess I have 2 sweater quantities of a yarn that is kind of woolly. Like, it smells sheepier, if you know what I mean. Like, it smells like it has more lanolin in it. And I'm curious if I can untwist, because you know when hanks are twisted up into like a nice little wrap before you like ball it up, I'm wondering if I can just wash the skeins as is and try that, like see if I can wash it like literally with Dawn dish soap to get the lanolin out, and see if that's gonna work for me. I haven't tested that yet, but that is on my list of things to do. And besides that, it does seem like superwash wool is a-okay. So that's lovely for me, lucky for me too, I guess. So I didn't have to like completely stash down all of my wool yarns, which is really nice. So what does this mean for my sweater collection? You'll have seen that yesterday, earlier in this video, I was wearing my oversized seasons cardigan, and that is knit not in a superwash wool. That was knit in piece fleece. So I washed that on the hand wash setting with just like gentle laundry detergent, because I read that you can wash piece fleece in the washer, and I did lay that out to dry, so that has not gone into the dryer. But I think just having kind of, it's not aggressive, right? It is the hand wash setting, but because it is doing more active washing than I can do with like a knit soaking in the tub, I think that that helped a lot to wash out the lanolin in that sweater, because I haven't had any issues while I've been wearing that sweater. But I did wear my one Nutidin sweater, and was having a reaction to that. So I'm going to hold on to my woolly wool sweaters and put them, I guess, into storage for the time being, and see if maybe next year, given a long enough like vacation from using anything with lanolin, if my body will allow me to wear those sweaters again. If not, then they are probably going to go to my mom or my mother-in-law or whoever wants to wear them, because it would be a shame for those sweaters not to get worn. But besides that, I do have obviously quite a few sweaters that are knit now in non-superwash wools as well as acrylic, and I'm working with some other various fibers with that Barocco remix. It's a blend of a bunch of different fibers with zero wool in it. So I do have plenty of options that are lanolin free, I suppose. Speaking of what I am wearing, so today I am wearing my weekender sweater that I recently finished, and I did a couple of modifications to this sweater. The main one is that the sleeves were meant to be knit in reverse or in regular stockinette. The whole rest of the sweater is in reverse stockinette, and I didn't really like how that looked, so I decided to just knit the sleeves in reverse stockinette as well. I'm really glad that I did that, because I don't think that I would have liked how that looked, to have like the stockinette sleeves and reverse stockinette body. But putting it on today is a really cold day. It's like 20 degrees outside, as you can tell, because Jack will not get off my lap. But I kind of knew that when I was knitting it, that the boat neckline, that I wasn't gonna be like thrilled with it 100% of the time. And I don't mind, like, you know, a day where I'm sitting inside my house and not going out and about. But because it's so cold, I had to wear like an undershirt, a thermal underneath. And I really don't like how like the neckline looks, where the neckline of the sweater and the neckline of what I'm wearing underneath it, like, do not mesh at all. And I know that in the knitting community, the weekender sweater is really popular. Like, a lot of people have knit it. So I'm curious, for those who have knit it, if you style it in any particular way. And I mean styling it with like a shirt or something underneath. I have not tried it with like a button up or like collared shirt underneath. I am curious to see how that would look, or if you really only wear it when you have a day that you don't have to need like a layer underneath. So if you have any styling advice for the weekender sweater, I am all ears. I want to know how you make the like boat neckline look as nice as possible. But I am just gonna keep working away here on this fade, practice fade and swatch, and I will catch up with you shortly. So I have finished the swatch, and I actually think I'm going back to the first idea of just switching back and forth between the pink with no speckles and the pink with speckles. Let me show you. So I haven't blocked this yet, obviously, but I just think there's such little difference between the pink with speckles and the pink without speckles that I faded it between this section, and you basically can't tell, and then this whole part is pink with no speckles. I just don't think that I can do a nice enough fade from this super dark pink to this pink with very, very little difference. So I think if I just keep it where it's pink with speckles, pink with no speckles throughout the entire thing, so having the whole thing kind of look like this section, that it will look better than trying to fade from this dark to this light. I am in the kitchen. I just got that swatch in the bath, in the sink, but I think I am going to call it here for this video. I got my So Totally Rad socks cast on, got a couple of those stripes done. I got my Semper sweater V-neck started and that swatch going. I think that is it for my cast on party this weekend, but I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.